song is entitled Come Gather Round by Swami Kriyananda.
Come gather round, let's joy sing out today. Dawn now is breaking, and the mountains say, it's only light can make the darkness run. Lift up your head, greet the rising sun. Greet the rising sun. Some people think to harvest happiness by reading troubles, easing every stress. The trouble is that troubles never end. Get rid of one and you face its friend. And you face its friend. Fix in your heart the songs of joy resound. You'll hear the echoes in the world around. Wind on a hill sounds lonely if you're sad, free if you're free, cheerful if you're glad. Cheerful if you're glad. Friends, come with me. We'll chant of battles won, shots not of anger. Joy will be our God. Before the light, the veils of sorrow rend. In inner freedom, all illusions end. All illusions end.
From Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. Can I switch microphones, John? Felt like I was backed in a corner there. How should we meet our tests? Week 34. That's one way. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Last week, we considered Satan's temptation of Jesus in the wilderness after his baptism by John. We discussed the question, does Satan exist? All of us experience temptation of one kind or another in our lives, some of us frequently, others only occasionally. Whether temptation comes to us from our own subconscious or from outside ourselves is secondary to the fact that it does come, and that we must deal with it. More important, then, is the question, how to deal with it. In fact, how to deal with tests of any kind. Martin Luther flung an ink pot at the devil who had appeared to test him. A dark stain on the wall of Luther's cell is pointed out to tourists in support of this story. Unfortunately, our trials are not often so summarily dismissed. As a fellow monk once said to Swami Kriyananda, speaking of Satan, if only I could get my hands on him. Jesus, during his temptation in the wilderness, overcame them and thereby set an example for all time by clinging the more determinedly to God. As Paramahansa Yogananda used to say, darkness cannot be driven out of a room with a stick. Once you turn on the light, however, the darkness will vanish as though it had never been. Jesus manifested this principle. The Bible tells us, therefore, that at last the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. In the Bhagavad Gita, the point is clarified further by the added explanation that there are three qualities in human nature: sattvic, or spiritually elevating; rajasic, or ego activating; and tamasic, or spiritually darkening. It is this triune aspect of human nature that the third chapter refers to with the words, "As fire is hidden by smoke, as a mirror is dulled by rust, and as an embryo is enclosed in the womb, so is the indwelling self enveloped by desire." Yogananda explained that each of these examples describes one of the qualities, or gunas. Sattva guna, that which elevates our consciousness, can be freed of any identity with ego by a little puff of meditation and right affirmation. Rajo guna, which embroils the ego in restless activity, can be worked off with a little more and a little longer effort. Tamo guna, embracing as it does such mental states as laziness and stupidity, can only be outgrown in time, since it inhibits even the desire for self-improvement. The example Jesus gave us was intended more for those in whom sattva guna is predominant. But if you yourself find elements in your consciousness that resist even the effort to cling to God in prayer and meditation, don't despair. Patience, as it has been well said, is the fastest path to God. As long as your efforts take you steadfastly in the right direction, you will come out right in time. Remember Yogananda's words, "A saint is a sinner who never gave up." If, however, your nature impels you, even against your will, to move in the wrong direction toward egoic desires and away from God, strive at least to detach yourself mentally from your wrong actions, which are induced by habit. The time will come when their own stored-up energy will tire and diminish. At that time, if you have not contributed to that energy by your consenting will, you will find it possible at least to redirect your energies more constructively. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Oh, oh.
Morning, everyone. How is everybody today? Yay. That's awake and ready. That's kind of fun. Many of us know that Yogananda would not start his lectures till people responded with the same energy that he put out, that awake and ready response. He would wait there. I think I have this vision, him waiting in Carnegie Hall in New York City, thousands, waiting for the New Yorkers to say awake and ready, which I don't think would have taken them that long. I was thinking how important this quality of alertness is in our everyday life, right? That energy that we need to put out to get to work, to do our work, to drive, etc. How important it is. I was speaking of New York, I was reminded of that again. I was just back last week. And I go back pretty often. And it always takes me about a day to get into the New York mode, I call it, which is one of really high alertness. And I was jet lagged, I didn't sleep much, and I went to a place where I love to go. One of my first stops is, I call it Bagel Heaven, but it's this little bagel shop in New York City, and there's two lines, one for the people to order, and the other one to pay and receive your bagel. Well, I was in this trance, it was probably jet lag fog or maybe flour fog from all the bagels being made, but I was right in the middle, and I was like contemplating, what bagel should I order? And this lady says, "Hey lady, what line are you in?" And I was like, oh, that's right, I have to wake up here. But how much more important is that alertness on the spiritual path? And then especially, again, so beautifully, our qualities are tied in with our topics from Raise. How do we meet our tests? Okay, we need to be alert. We need to have energy. What are our tests? It's not the soul that's being tested. The soul is the perfect reflection of God, of light, of love. It's the ego. The ego's in that limited state. I think I know who I am, or I can only do this or that, or whatever those limitations are. That's what's being tested. And how do we respond to our tests? We have two choices, don't we? We can close down. We can say, they're wrong, I'm right, this situation is terrible, why do I have to endure this? Whatever it is, we can just close down like that. Or we can trust and we can open up and say, I wonder if this test has come to me for a reason. This is why we say we welcome tests on this path, because they're opportunities to grow in deeper understanding and to let go of the bonds that hold us back, that keep us limited again. The tests, they make you break through, I was remembering many, many years ago when I went through a really difficult test. And I was struggling with it. I couldn't climb out of it. I was definitely responding in the first way. I was closing down. I was angry. I was resentful. And fortunately, I had a dear friend. I was living at Ananda Village at the time, and she could see this. And she's, she must have said to herself, boy, this person really needs a lot of help. And so she just came into my life, really, with a lot of energy and she was very alert. And she said, okay, I want to help you get through this, but you're going to have to do a couple of things. I said, okay, I'm open. Because I had been so close and so struggling. I knew that where I was, I couldn't get out that way. And so she said, first thing, I want you to keep your heart open. Keep my heart open. And then I realized my heart was just, there were more and more doors just closing it. I think someone had written to Yogananda about a test that they were going through. And he said, in essence, do not tie my hands with negativity. What I think he was trying to say is, how can I help you if you are closed? How can I help you if you're negative? Really important to open our hearts when we go through tests. And as we all go through many different tests, whether financial or in physical or in relationship to others. It's very varied and complex because we're varied. But the one thing you could say is that none of us are exempt from these tests. They happen. They just come, small and big and whatever. But even with that step of keeping my heart open, I had such a difficult time. And she was really smart. She said, okay, this is what I want you to do to help keep your heart open. I want you to do something new every single day. Okay, and what does that do? That means I put out energy. What does that do? I become alert. And so at first I was like, well, what am I going to do that's new? I was so stuck. I was so caught in the judgment, in the hurt, in the lack of my world had just shrunk to this. What do you mean I'm going to do something new? And I had no idea how even to do that. She goes, well, okay, what are some of your hobbies? Well, I like to sew. Well, okay, do you have a sewing machine? No. Well, let's go get you one. And she got me a sewing machine. And then it snowed at that time. Have you ever gone skiing? No. Well, then let's get you some cross-country skis. It just, little by little, what happened, my world started to expand. And this focus that I had, where I was so close with this test that I went through, began to open. Oh, I can sew again. Oh, I can ski. And these are just really mundane, but they're ways of helping us to move towards spirit. Tests come so that we can grow in our connection, so we can grow towards God. There's a beautiful story when Yogananda was opening the Lake Shrine Center in Southern California. The monks were working really hard for the dedication ceremony, and it was beautiful. Many of you that have been there know how lovely it is. Beautiful. Well, they had a test. The place was filled with mosquitoes. As they were trying to work, they were just, they were just all over them. And Swami Kriyananda was getting so frustrated that he asked Yogananda, he goes, what's up with all these mosquitoes? Why are there these mosquitoes in this beautiful place? And what we're trying to do. And Master, in essence, I'm going to paraphrase, he said, so that we keep moving towards God. So even this, everything on this earth, it will test us. The mosquitoes will come. We had a beautiful ceremony last night, an annual tradition called Guru Night. It's just a highlight. And I was just remembering in years past when I would help set up the shrines, and inevitably we'd start early, calm, beautiful. As soon as we'd put up that picture, a wind would come up and whip, and then you'd put it up again, and and it's like, why is this happening? We're doing this for God. We're doing this so that others can enjoy the beauty, and it just inevitably would come up. It's constantly where we have these opportunities to move us towards spirit. The other thing she reminded me to do is to love God. Simply remember to love God. There's a beautiful story from the epic, the great Indian epic, the Mahabharata. In Kunti Devi, there was a little vignette where her sons were exiled to the forest for many, many years, and she was in deep sorrow over it. Can you imagine your sons being exiled? Deep, deep sorrow she was feeling. But what did she do? She started chanting, Lord Krishna, over and over. That was her mantra. Mantra could be love God, or mantra could be anything like that. Hers was Lord Krishna, Lord Krishna, Lord Krishna. Do you know what happened then? She started to feel so much joy that Lord Krishna saw this, and he decided to appear to her. He goes, I want to give you a boon because of all the deep joy, because of the effort that you have made. I will give you anything you want of these earthly pleasures. And she responded by saying, Lord, give me more suffering, more difficulties, for it is in suffering that I remembered you. We get to that point where if we can remember to hold on to God, even these tests will bring us out to the other side where we're holding on to God. Lord Krishna, Divine Mother, God, Yogananda, Sister Gangamata, who was Yogananda's foremost woman disciple, came to the ashram in her 60s, and then the next 20 years of her life, she went through really intense physical suffering. If you haven't read her book, God Alone, I highly, highly recommend it. All through it, and in it, it's a compilation of letters that she's written to questions that devotees had, and it's just a most beautiful book. But she wrote throughout her life, she said, I fed my soul with God and read about the saints. That's another way to help us climb through these tests, is to cling to God, read about the saints. She said, in times of need, I drew from them and was comforted. She said to a close friend that as far as she could remember, she never had one thought that didn't have the thought of God in it. And even then, at the end of her life, the last 3 weeks of her life, she asked that the poem Samadhi be read to her every night. Samadhi is a poem that Yogananda read about cosmic consciousness. She had that read every single night to her the last 3 weeks of her life. And her last words were, what joy, too much joy. After she left her body, Yogananda said that 20 years of suffering never took away her love for God. Again, these tests come so that we could find our fulfillment in God. They don't come to punish us. They come so that we remember where to turn our energies. We remember that it's in God alone where we're going to find that deep fulfillment, that true joy. We need to have faith and courage. When we respond to tests calmly, they loosen that grip on them. And by moving energy, by being alert as these tests come around, you tend to loosen that grip that you had on your test. So when I was negative and was holding on, I held on so tightly, I couldn't go past that. But when we trust and we have faith that there is something bigger happening, then we can let go of it more easily. The Master's Sister Gangamata wrote in that letter, in God Alone, someone was having a really difficult test. And she said, take hold of the Guru's robe with all your strength and all your might. Ask the help of the Guru all the time. Obey this to the limit. Open up to him. And she wrote, never stop praying until you feel his presence. Lord Krishna, Lord Krishna, Lord Krishna. There's a beautiful story of the man who said in a dream he saw 2 sets of footprints on the beach. I think many of us know this story. And then he realized at one point He had only seen one set of footprints. And he realized, actually, when he had seen the two, it meant that it was him and Jesus. And then at one point, he had seen only one set. And then he started to get really, really sad. And Jesus then appeared to him and said, "My son, why are you so sad?" And he said, "Well, my Lord, I realized that in that one set of footprints, I thought you were always with me. And I realized when that happened, it was during my time of most need. You just left me." And Jesus just smiled. He said, "I didn't leave you. That was when I carried you. That was that one set of footprints. I carried you." And then, I don't know if this is an accurate part of the story, then the man asked Jesus, "Well, what is this long streak that I see in the sand?" And Jesus said, "Well, that's when I dragged you." Sometimes we feel like we're getting dragged. But the reminder in that story is that Jesus, Master, the great ones, they're always with us. How do we meet our tests? With great alertness, with great energy. We have to meet them where they are. We can't just close off, back away. Best way to do that. And then what we'll find behind is that silver bullet, that golden egg, whatever. We'll find that Christ was there all along, carrying us. Sometimes he has to drag us, and that's okay. Whatever. Sometimes it doesn't look pretty, and that's okay. It didn't look pretty. And thank God for community. Thank God for friendships, because sometimes a friend helps us ascend, just like in the beautiful song, "Life is a dream, time is a stream. All these burdens will be carried away. They're not who we are. Let go of them. Breathe through them. Love God. Do something new every day. Have faith and courage that the masters are always with us, guiding us, taking us to that deeper understanding, that deeper connection to God. Underneath it all, just like Kunti praying, through her deep sorrow, she prayed, Lord Krishna, Lord Krishna, Lord Krishna." And then he appears to her and would give her any boon in the world. And what does she say? "Give me more suffering." Because it's in those times. If you read, again, God Alone, it's in those times, she said, those were sacred moments when I was tested. Deep moments, if we could find the blessing. Supporting each other, trusting, loving God, keeping our hearts open. So I will end now with a poem from Whispers from Eternity, Yogananda's book of prayer demands and poems. And this is called "Keep the Compass Needle of My Attention Ever Pointed Toward Thee." Whether soaring through the sky encased in a steel air cage, or drawn over the land by snorting iron steeds, or moving easily over smooth highways on rubber wheels, or having my very thoughts paralyzed by the pounding din of assembly lines, the compass needle of my attention will ever keep turning toward thy magnetic north pole of divine love. Beaten by winds of hapstance, drenched by cloudbursts of misery, sucked down in the mud of soul-enmeshing, ego-whipped activity, or wandering lost in jungles of confusion, my mind will yet ever reach out for thy guiding touch. The raft of my life, tossed about helplessly by the driving storms of need, was drifting toward rocks of insatiable desire. O pole star in our wisdom skies, thy twinkling light beckoned and directed me toward thy shores of eternal contentment. Though countless mechanisms pound, twist, or stretch my anguished nerves, yet will the homing pigeon of my love wing its way peacefully toward its true home in thee. Let's have a moment of silence.